Welcome to Nostalgia Pilots, a Gundam podcast that thinks of you as a father but knows so little about you. I'm Hugh.
I'm Jurd.
And I'm Spence.
And today we're talking about Gundam, the 8th MS Team, Episode 10, The Shuddering Mountain, Part 1.
Dun dun dun!
I wondered if you were going to open with the podcast that had feelings, but then it became a soldier. Okay, so my opening note for this episode, and I think it holds true for this entire episode, is the best Zaku action. This was my favorite episode so far this run, and it is entirely Zaku-based.
100% agree. Like, oh my god, these Zakus are fucking epic looking. You know? They have like the Renaissance feel. They feel like a functional suit of armor with amazing tech behind it.
Can someone explain to me what was going on with the Fetty suits, though? Because it felt like they almost got a downgrade. They felt like they were in GoBots most of the episode.
A lot of the ones we see are like the mass-produced gym units that like kind of suck. And I think that, you know, Norris has a very custom suit, and he's doing most of the badassery.
Yeah, there's a couple of suits that I didn't recognize that are on the Zaku side that are just sort of, like there's that scene coming down the elevator where Jerrica's trying to load up the ship to escape, and there's a guy she basically enlists to assist her, but he's mad, like, oh, well, we're all going to help you now, and he's in a sweet suit that I had no concept of. But we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves.
Like, I've seen those purple ones before with, like, the cross-pad shaped items. I don't know what they're called, but they are sweet.
So, as per the previous episode, we've managed to locate the base, or I should say the Fetties have managed to locate the base, in which the Apsilus, in which Aesop's fables are being hidden. And so they managed to start bombarding it, and they're essentially in open combat at this point. And I did notice, I don't know if it was the same in the subs, in the dubs, there's a line, because there's a lot of, and this is another aspect that makes it one of my favorite episodes. I get big into when there's a lot of secondary stuff and we're not necessarily just always on the main characters, when they have just the throwaway fodder guys. But there's some movement between some of the Fetty troops, and did you notice somebody's like, cut the chatter, Sally? And in my mind, that lady sounded exactly like Sally Poe. So now that is canon.
I thought so too. I was like, yes. Sally, wait, where is she?
Because that's the 07 team.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if we were getting just like a little head nod there, if that was intentional. It really sounded like her to me. Now, okay, so there's a bunch of combat, and really the thrust to this episode is the two sides, that Aesop is taking off to space at top speed if they can get it functional, and at the same time, the MS-8th team is having to defend these three tanks, which is an interesting turn, right? Because we've sort of discussed the idea of why would you even need a mobile suit and why is a tank not a more useful thing. But we get the impression here that the tanks provide more heavy artillery but don't have the mobility of a mobile suit, which, you know, that makes sense.
Right.
So because they have to be anchored in order to not ricochet backward after doing a volley. So that's why they're not as mobile. Right.
So can anybody clarify for me why Karen picks up the nickname GM Head this episode? Because I did not get that.
Because her headpiece got replaced with one of the mass-produced units. So, like, she actually has one of those GM unit heads.
That, of course. I was like, did she get a new suit this episode? But no, absolutely. Now that I'm looking back at it, you're right. Her block got knocked off.
Yeah.
Because she got in a Rock'em Sock'em robot fight. And now she's got a new noggin. Yeah.
So that's what they patched her suit with. Like, they just had the part lying around, so it's like, it's a camera, deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the animation is beautiful this episode. So Norris goes out and he, like, kicks a bunch of ass. He's using this, like, electromagnetic whip, like, harpoon thing.
It's so smart, considering...
It is very cool.
Considering how the Zakus are made, having that kind of very strong magnet to short circuit, the the electronics, especially as is shown later in the episode. It's a brilliant mechanic, and I don't know why it hasn't been made for, like, who didn't think of that on the Fetty side, right?
Right.
So,
like, and there's particularly a scene that I liked, where he like ninja ropes off of one of the Fetty planes.
Oh yeah,
that is like so cool, and they've like the gunners have got him specifically in their sights, and then he sort of like swings around and gets the plane in between them, and they shoot the plane instead.
Yeah, well, when he bops Shiro with it and takes out Shiro's electronics for a few minutes, and Shiro essentially has to manually reboot his suit, that's also really effective, because it's this really creepy thing where Shiro's sitting in his cockpit and he can hear him stomping around, and he's essentially screaming like, "Why won't you end it? Why won't you end it?" And that's also a turning point for him. But Norris has a bit of a turning point earlier in the episode in which he's heading back, and really, okay, so Jerrica's loading up the escape ship, the Kurgan, or whatever it's called. What's it actually called again?
It's called the Kurgan.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so she's attempting to load her escape ship, essentially, and Norris realizes that somebody's got to hold them off or they're not going to make it. So he heads back outside, and that's where we get that little bit of dialogue where him and... What's her actual name, so I can stop calling her Jerrica? Ina. Him and Ina have a little discussion, and it kind of seems like maybe he's got feelings for Ina, but then Ina's like, well, I always considered you a father, and he really takes that as an honor, which, okay, that's a bit of a turnaround, I guess.
So, but I have some questions before we go into that. First of all, why is she not in uniform? Because clearly she's still going to be a pilot, but was she, like, stripped of her rank or something? It made me feel a lot of feelings, but the beautiful thing, like you were saying, this episode was really well done artistically. They gave that impression of having power stripped away from Ina very well in her body language. Like, I normally don't get those kinds of feels from a character not doing anything on screen, but the way she was curled up in a ball, the way she was making herself small, and the way her eyes were just beautifully done to convey a very complex set of emotions in a few frames. And I feel like the pep talk that Norris gives her is way too short. I could have watched 5 more minutes of it.
Well, also, if you look at it, she's very much pleading for Norris not to leave. Like, she to be fair, she doesn't want him to leave. She would rather anyone else do this thing that they both know needs to be done. Because,
well, yeah, she's the only family that hasn't betrayed her.
Yeah, and if you think about it, right, they've already entered the Fetties have already entered the tunnel. They're disarming the bombs. So the idea of even blowing up the tunnel to stop them from getting in doesn't work. Like, they've already thought of that. So the one thing they've got left is to see if they can just hold off until they can get away.
Yeah, interestingly, kind of almost on the flip side of that, when she, to go to Spence's point about her lack of power and having it stripped away, when that guy that I mentioned earlier, the mobile suit comes down and she pleads to help load the ship, and he's essentially like, oh, well, we're just working for you now. He says, is this your brother's order? And she says, no, I'm just asking you as a fellow soldier to please assist your fellow soldiers. And so she's not, leveling rank. She's just using coercion, essentially, which I thought that might be why she's not in uniform, because her arc of going through the same thing that Shiro is, right, which is I won't fight this war for the side that I'm fighting it for, but perhaps I will fight it for my friends. But that gets really complicated, because then she essentially declares, if Norris dies, then I'm to blame, and I won't fight the enemy, but I'm going to kill all you motherfuckers. Oh, sorry, I don't know if I should be dropping F-bombs, but I'll kill all y'all if you manage to kill Norris, so... Yeah,
it's definitely a turning point for both of them. For both Shiro and for Ina, they choose the people that they're close to as a reason to fight, as opposed to the bigger picture.
Right. Essentially, last episode, when Ina found out they were still working on the ship, she was like, no, screw this. These people are injured. We need to get them out. And so she hasn't had her power stripped so much as she has as the pilot. And she's like, we're just going to take the ship. We're going to go back to space. We're going to regroup. And she's not going to let Norris sacrifice. Like, they both know that Norris is not coming back from this fight. And she can't live with that without going out. So that's why she turns around and like has her break and pilots Absolus again.
And interestingly, while we have all of this sort of chosen family or like reason to fight kind of debate going on, her actual brother is busy being the most murderous bastard.
Oh yeah.
He turns into Lady Un this episode. Do you know why? So first,
oh my god, I was thinking the same thing.
First,
it was the most murderous Lady Un male figure in the show. Like, it was amazing.
You're always in my head, so you know it's not a surprise. So Guineas does the classic kill all of your peons with poison before you have your grand finale. And as he's doing his little congratulations, gentlemen, as they're all dead on the floor, this was a great success, and he walks away and leaves an unpinned grenade in one of the champagne glasses and double kills them.
Yeah.
And I'm just, the first thought is, you kick him out of the airplane and then you shoot him.
And then you shoot them. Exactly.
Well, I think this was more to cover the evidence than anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're leaving anyway.
Now, I will ask this. What is his plan? Like, we've seen that he has like a weak constitution and he's not the healthiest of people. And he then says the Absolus is his. And I'm like, but it's not. Like, you're going to pilot it and your sister's against you at this moment. Like, you haven't won her back to your side. In fact, you haven't done anything to get her back under your wing, so to speak.
So I think part of it is to get rid of anybody who could possibly side with Ina. If they have to choose between the siblings, anybody with any kind of remote sense would choose the not crazy one. So he's just ruling out anybody that might possibly go against him.
I think he just didn't want to share credit. Like,
there's that.
Like, he's like, I'm the only one who understands how the Absolus works. It's my baby, me. This is my project, and I'm gonna essentially entomb all the workers alive so that no one can know the secrets of it.
The thing is, if the previous 9 episodes have taught us anything, it's that the Absolus is like a high-end sports car in that it's amazing when it works, but it breaks down every 20 seconds, and then it's incredibly difficult to repair. So murdering your entire pit crew was probably not your best move, but I guess we'll see how that pans out.
But the Fetties are also pretty murderous, because we do get a scene when they're going into the tunnels where Kojima's boss is like... And I assume that their rank is based on mustache bushiness at this point.
That is how it works in the military, yeah.
He says, well, we should just blow up the mountain. And Kojima's like, but we don't have any nukes. How are we going to do that? And he's like, well, we have a huge number of nuclear reactors. I'm sure we can figure something out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things that makes me very angry because you are sacrificing your soldiers without their consent.
Well, I think the show is driving at something. I mean, we haven't gotten to the conclusion of this episode yet, but I feel like the show, as with a lot of these Gundam shows, is driving at a point that the show itself does not necessarily embody, which is like, war is hell and you really shouldn't bother fighting anyway, but please come back next season for our new war show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
I think the other thing here is Shiro temporarily loses his mind and puts Elidor in charge.
Well, okay, Shiro has to put Elidor in charge because they're actually fighting in a city.
Yeah.
And they don't have line of sight.
And thankfully, Elidor is at least competent in his abilities. His brush with fame hasn't dulled his ears any. And so he's at least effective in being like, okay, this is an elevator. This is an elevator coming up, and it's coming up at this spot. And, he's at least effective in giving the correct coordinates for things moving. So there's that. But then we get Norris coming in and being badass.
Yes.
I feel like this is the only time we've seen Elidor doing his job effectively. Like I feel like they had to give him this bit of the episode just so we stop having the questions of, is he really a part of this team? Like, is he like?
I think this is the first time that he and Mikkel were competent at the same time. So it was like the lunar equinox, whatever, stars aligned, and they were both paying attention at the same time.
I feel like this episode was so packed with things actually happening that there was no time to have a dumb BB letter or to have Elidor screw up somehow or even to have Sanders more than just yell a line at some point. Like, since Sanders' curse has been broken, he's basically not on the show anymore. We just know he's another dude who's around who's pretty competent every now and then.
Yeah, I'd say that's accurate.
But Norris does reach the surface, and Norris is unconquerable. He is going around killing these dudes, being super badass in, like, just beautiful animation of him taking out these gun tanks.
There's one gun tank that he, that hesitates, and it shows in slow motion. He's got the sword right over the tank, and then when he plunges it in and pulls it back out, that's a lot of blood. So I'm wondering how many people were in there, or if it's blood mixed with motor oil, in which case it should probably be on fire, and that would have been cooler.
I think it's supposed to be oil, but it's also supposed to be blood.
Yeah,
in the sense that it's like
oil. This is supposed to be a kids show, so we're gonna get around the censors, so to speak, by making it oil, not blood.
Yeah.
But I will say, I know this is a bit of a spoiler for the end of the episode, this segment is my favorite part of the episode. It not only shows that the Federation has not put in any consideration for it's basically, it completes the Vietnam analogy, right? Like, the Viet Cong were trained soldiers. They were used to the terrain. They were ready for this. I mean, they pointed out in the earlier part of the episode when they say, you guys are pretty good, but you can't avoid gravity, when the guy was using the EMP whip. And then in this scene where you have these young, inexperienced people, I mean, Sanders and old girl are the two most experienced, but they're not there. It's this inexperienced commander from space, and he's seriously being outclassed. Like, he's being outclassed. The tank pilots are being outclassed. By the way, I love the fact that the tanks are the mortar things from the original Mobile Suit Gundam. It made me
yes.
But he's one dude in a not as equipped mobile suit is wrecking these guys. Like, it's awesome. Like, everything he does is awesome.
Sanders even says, like, "Oh, we can't fight this guy. This guy is an ace."
Yeah.
It's the one memorable thing that he says. And we cut back to Shiro, who's trying to protect the last of the tanks, and he gets scared, and he's like, "There you are!" And he closes his freaking eyes to shoot. And I'm like, this is not Boondock Saints. You are not Rocco or Wyatt Earp. You open your eyes, you dummy. This is me censoring myself.
I think that's just an anime thing.
So,
I also like, in this fight, Sanders isn't using, we know that they have some sort of rudimentary beam weapons, but none of the Gundam pilots are using any. They're not even using beam weapons, which we have seen. But Norris, he's just using an old school sword and shield. Like, yeah, the shield can shoot rockets and things, but for the most part, he's just sword and shielding it. Like,
and it doesn't run out of ammo. It shows one of the benefits of it.
The worst sounds you can hear in a gunfight is click. Like, and I do love. There's a really awesome scene where he has Norris pinned down under gunfire, and he runs out of ammo, and he goes, "Oh no, I'm out of ammo," and he tries to hide that fact as he kind of slyly tries to reload, and Norris goes, "Oh, out of ammo. Okay," and just goes at him because he knows he can't shoot him. It's just all of this choreography, all of the way this is just really, really good.
And
well, Norris.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say Norris is one step ahead right till the end, right? Because although Norris does eventually get taken down, he manages to essentially sacrifice himself to defeat the final tank, to take out the final tank, and thus stop the advance. Even though Shiro has killed him, he has not won the day.
Right.
But again, we have another set of really, really good facial animation when Shiro thinks he's going to die. Again, that body language of that frantic fear, like, oh shit, I am going to die, curling into a ball, kind of trying to hide from it, and then that spark of realization, I'm not dead yet, I want to live, crazy big eyes, yelling, spitting. I cannot say enough, the last 3 or 4 episodes have been beautifully animated and have had wonderful intricacies that have really pulled at heartstrings more so than the generic first half of the show.
I'm really glad you said that, because I actually have a very specific question I wanted to ask. So there's that final fight, and Shiro realizes that he's lost even though he's won. And then really the big reveal of the episode is he essentially says, I quit, I'm not fighting anymore. But in that sequence, to me, he looks like he's drawn quite a bit older. He looks like he's suddenly drawn in a much more mature fashion. I don't know if you guys noticed that at all. I felt like it was intentional. Like he looks maybe 5 years older all of a sudden. I'm not sure if that's going to stay consistent or if that was just one moment of that sort of animation, but it definitely struck me.
Well, you know how when somebody starts to have a panic attack or something, and all of a sudden the color drains from their face, and they go through this really fast physical metamorphosis due to this panic, and your brain is like trying to compensate and protect itself. And I feel like that is one of the reasons they would have done something like that, because this is a very traumatic experience that he is going through in short succession. So I think that choice was A, a purposeful choice, and B, very well executed.
Agreed. The thing I really love about this episode is they gave Norris, during that fight scene, some like really great 70s ace dialogue. Like he says things like, die knowing you are not able to effectively use your mobile suit's full power. Relying on your eyes was your weakness.
So how... Yeah, no. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, not even all of his advice really made sense to me. I guess relying on your eyes was your weakness was, a better line than your weakness was, I have an electro whip.
I want to know how he is able to power up his suit again. Because, like, he yells, I want to live, and all of a sudden the Zaku comes back to life. Like, did he emit his own electrical shock to the system to get it to jumpstart it?
Well, I mean, because I think it's the sort of thing where because they have their own inboard nuclear reactors, they just have to sort of reset the circuit.
Yeah, the mechanism in he's got some massive circuit board that he's swapping over. I don't know if he just has it's burnt out and he's got to swap in a new one and a spare. I didn't really understand that. I just kind of took it as a, mechanical reboot.
Okay. I thought it was voice activated. That was one cool thing that we kind of missed, is that Norris's Zaku is voice activated. You guys noticed that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
he does. that scene in the hangar where he's like, all right, let's go. I know what to do. And the Gundam, the Zaku starts walking alongside him, and he gets that really awesome exit of the bunker.
The only unfortunate thing is that he named his Zaku Goof.
Well, that's the kind of suit it is it's a goof.
But like for us Americans, that means something completely different.
Yeah, I kind of think it's usually pronounced Gauf.
See, like, one of the things I noticed, and we've seen this a lot from the Fetties and the 8th MS team, is they don't seem to get the importance of actually following orders to the point of, like, yes, they kill Norris. But the thing about it is, as we say, he didn't win the day by killing Norris. He lost because Norris accomplished his mission. Norris accomplished the thing he needed to do. The first task was to delay them. The second task was to eliminate all the tanks so that they wouldn't have the artillery fire to stop them from escaping. And then at that point, if he could have done both of those and escaped, he would have, and he would have just solidly won. The only thing is, at that point, he was like, you know what? I know I'm going to die here. Shoot my little thing off. Poof, my little red smoke goes off. Time for them to leave. I'm going to hold everybody else off. And it proves that he, with the focus that he had and the skills that he had, he won the day, even though he sacrificed to let everybody else get away. Whereas the 8th MS team has shown consistently through episode after episode that they don't necessarily get the ends justify the means sort of thing when it comes to the orders that they're given. They keep making exceptions. They keep making, for the guerrillas, they make exceptions, allowing them in the cockpit and all this other stuff. Whereas the end goal of the mission or the actual task they need to complete is secondary.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of samurai spirit going around Norris in this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. That absolute discipline kind of idea.
He also could have definitely piloted the tall geese. He had a lot of...
Yeah, there's so much machismo. And I do like when we see him walking off, we get like the contrast in his design, because he has like this super like drawn, almost skeletal face, and then he's got like a big pouch. I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah. Interesting character design, yeah. So does that bring us to our favorite moment of the episode then?
I think so. And mine was definitely Norris swinging around like Spider-Man on his electro whip.
Mine was from that same fight. It's something we haven't actually mentioned yet, though. During that battle, Shiro manages to get his arm damaged. I think that's just after he runs out of ammo.
Yes.
And in the end, when he decides that he's going to live and he's going to fight back, he ends up ripping off his own damaged arm and using it to beat Norris with. And I thought, okay, yes, that's excellent. That's a fantastic moment.
Yeah, and he did that on the radio, because that's how Norris figures out who Shiro is. He's like, oh, yeah. You're the boy that Aina is into.
Which you get the impression...
How ironic.
Yeah, you get the impression that maybe he would have fought a little harder, but he doesn't really... he's going to give it to Shiro. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah,
well, he did... Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
No, go ahead. No, you're good.
He did manage to keep Ina's love alive, but B, complete his mission. So he was being a good father figure, but also being a good soldier. And so in the end, he did get a little bit of his feelings back.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Through murder. He got his feelings back and was a great dad through murder. It's so anime. It's all anime. But no, it's my favorite part is basically everything surrounding that final fight with Norris. Like the introduction of that fight, showing just how superior he was when they were fighting against the airships that looked very, very reminiscent of things out of Robotech.
Yeah.
And I question and I wonder, like, as much as I love it, I'm like, do the Federation soldiers not have something similar? Because again, this Zaku's wrecking them. Like, and it doesn't seem to be like it's wrecking them, and it's trying to protect a super secret weapon that's supposed to be doing the wrecking. Like, just give everybody these Zakus. Screw the giant turtle. Like,
yeah, like, well, I think you're supposed to feel that it's not so much the custom Zaku, it's how good Norris is with it.
Yeah,
yeah.
But no, like Norris he's excellent. Like his swordplay is wonderful. Like the animation around that when he's like spinning the blade or throwing it and doing things like that is just really, really good. I hope this is what is indicative of the rest of the episodes of the series, because this is a short series. So I hope that this animation quality stays to the climax of this series.
Only 2 episodes left, right?
Yep.
And then for me, I will say it again. The animation of all of the body language was beautiful and wonderful. But I do also have to give a nod to the show really showing how important a communications officer, an effective communications officer, is. Even though I hate Elidor, I as a former Signal Battalion soldier, that just made my little networked heart happy.
Nice. Okay, you can find all our show notes at nostalgiapilots.com. Follow us on Twitter at nostalgiapilots, and send us feedback, nostalgiapilots@gmail.com. Find everything I do over at hughjodonnell.com.
You can find all of my business over at skinner.fm.
And you can find mine at nerdswithvoices.com.
And you can find me at resonantmoon.com.
Join us next time when we look at The Shuddering Mountain Part 2. And until next week, relying on your eyes was your final mistake.